I'm a current Masters of Medical Research student with the Griffith School of Medical Science, as well as being a tutor for the Griffith School of Medical Science as well. Well, my jobs are pretty flexible. I sort of do anywhere between sort of 15 hours a week upwards, depending on sort of the week, the semester, and all that sort of stuff. The subjects I teach into sort of vary again, depending on the actual semester itself. So over summer I might teach a bit less, or I might teach different subjects, as opposed to, first trimester or second trimester. So a typical day for me sort of, I guess, varies depending on the day itself. It could be anywhere from sort of, teaching all day from 9 till 5 to sort of, being in the lab doing experiments all day, doing data entry, marking exams till the very sort of early hours of the morning. Doing sort of, because it's sort of a weird balance between sort of doing research and doing sort of, tutoring. I sort of find myself sort of with a very sort of different sort of day-to-day schedule depending on the day itself or sort of the trimester that I'm in, rather than sort of, being very predictable and sort of very laid out, I guess, if that makes sense. But yeah. So I think the best part about, first of all, tutoring and sort of teaching is sort of seeing the improvement within the people that we teach. So seeing them go from sort of, a place where they may not understand a certain concept to a place where they now, completely understand something. And sort of that light bulb moment that they have is probably, I'm yet to find a word that sort of describes how good that feeling is when you see that sort of light bulb moment in somebody's eyes. But it's sort of probably the most like amazing part of my job. And it sort of is, the reason that I just, love coming to work each day. With regards to research though, I think that sort of the best part of that is sort of the varied schedule. I'm someone who doesn't like sort of having, a set calendar per se. I like sort of having a sort of, varied sort of day that can sort of vary from one day to the next, which I really enjoy. And I think that as well as that, the ability to sort of, give back to a field of research that I care really, significantly about. So I care a lot about cardiovascular pharmacology, and I find that being able to, put some impactful research within that field, really means a lot to me personally. So it's something I really enjoy doing. I think the most important one, probably with teaching and I guess with research as well, is certainly enthusiasm. So really sort of bringing your all to a class and being sort of, keeping that sort of high level of energy. Because there's like nothing worse than sort of someone who sort of comes in to teach you and is just so, mellow, and they're just not interested in what they're teaching. So I think that certainly sort of keeping that sort of high level of enthusiasm constantly throughout the day is a big part of it. I think as well as that, certainly being organised. For someone such as myself, I teach quite a few first year courses, so I need to have a really organised day, otherwise sort of everything sort of falls over each other. And I think as well as that, it's also important to make sure that you're sort of, I guess with that, your time management's really there. So making sure that you're really sort of on top of when getting what you need to get done when it needs to be done, if that makes sense. And then as well as that, probably also a tolerance to little sleep as well is also really handy. I think as well as that, certainly sort of building your scientific knowledge base is a big part of it as well, particularly I guess as a researcher and also as a teacher. Being able to keep up with the trends that are sort of within the literature and all the new sort of parts of research that are coming out are just as important. As well as that, certainly maintaining effective communication skills, particularly when teaching, but certainly also in research. So making sure that I'm able to get an idea across to people in a way that makes sense and doesn't confuse everyone in the process of me explaining it is really good. And yeah, no, apart from that, yeah, that's about it. I'd say certainly probably one of the most challenging aspects is being able to see a particular concept from several different sides and being able to explain it in several different ways. I found that sort of, it's not a one, so teaching's not like a one size fits all sort of thing. You need to be able to explain something in, 6 or 7 different ways to 6 or 7 different people. And I think that being able to view something from several different perspectives and having a good understanding of how it actually works is a really great way of being able to break it down and make sure that, if a student doesn't quite understand a concept or doesn't quite, isn't quite grasping the idea, explain it in a slightly different way that they then might understand, because I found I needed a lot of that when I was in, my undergraduate degree. I often needed things to be drawn out in a diagram for me, otherwise I couldn't understand words. But sort of being able to see it from a different angle and being able to teach it in different angles certainly helps in being able to really make sure that, we're sort of getting the message across to the students in the best way possible and making sure they're able to learn the best way possible as well. So originally at the start of this year, I was doing a summer research project with the Griffith School of Medical Science. And this was right after I'd finished biomed, and I wasn't too sure if I wanted to do, research, if I wanted to try my hand at sort of medicine. And I found that after doing sort of a 6-week project in the lab, I really, really enjoyed research. And from that I decided that my Master's in Medical Research would be the right sort of program for me, because it allowed me to sort of do research and get involved within that sort of research environment. But at the same time, I was around the school during summertime, which is when they do a lot of the hiring for the sessional staff. And I heard that they were hiring for tutors for a whole bunch of first-year courses. And I sort of jumped on that train as I heard about the opportunity, and then ended up tutoring for basically every first-year course. Well, I always had a love for biology, particularly when I was in high school and I started learning that the body is essentially a sort of perfect machine, and looking at the different mechanisms that underlie how the body works, I always found really interesting, because it was like this super intricate puzzle that then every piece fit together completely perfectly, which I found really interesting. With regards to research, because I originally went into biomed as a biomedical science student, because I wanted to get into medicine. And then as I went through biomedical science, I realized about halfway through that the research side and the thought processes behind research really interested me, and the logic that underlies, well, what if I did this, or what if I looked at this and how this relates to this other concept, and seeing how everything's interrelated, I found was really interesting, and asking those sorts of questions. And I found that was a really, that's why I got into research, I guess. With regards to teaching though, I just took the opportunity because it came along, and I thought, that seems like a good idea to do. I'm going to go and do that now. And I didn't really think too much about it, but it has grown into something that I really enjoy because of the improvement that you see in the students. So I was a Bachelor of Biomedical Science graduate. I graduated in December of last year. And I'm now currently a Master's of Medical Research student in my first year, and that runs over a year and a half. So I've got about a year left on my tenure for that. So I guess I just stayed at the uni and rather than leaving. It's as I said, I heard about the opportunities while I was here over summer doing a research program, and then I went through the normal job application process of writing up a resume, then submitting the resume, and then going to a formal interview for 2 out of 3 of the jobs I ended up getting. The third job, they just gave it to me on the onus of knowing me, hopefully. But I basically, by the end of those interview processes, had already been given the job, basically, which was great, because it gave me an element of choice in what I was doing, so I could choose different classes and all that stuff for what really fit around my timetable really well, which was a nice, I guess, luxury to have after 3 years of timetabling in undergrad. But yeah, so it was just the I guess the normal job application process for the most part. But it was certainly a lot more comfortable because I had those connections. So it was probably a bit easier than just blindly applying, if that makes sense. I think what I most likely would have wanted to have known about when I was in undergrad is the broadness of what you can do afterwards, and that you don't have to be I guess, because I went into it as a pre-medicine degree, and I thought of it only as that, and I didn't realise that there were so many different opportunities to do different things, because for the first 2 years I was really focused on just medicine it, and then once I started to look outside that, I realised, oh, I can go and do research and go and do something that's really impactful to me personally and to that field. But then I also, could get involved in teaching and all that stuff, which I never thought about in first year at all. So I probably wish I had kept myself, I guess, more open when I was in first year to things like different research projects and, some like the summer research programs and that they run. Because I did it really late. I only did it in third year when, if I had done it in first year or second year, I may have figured out a lot of that stuff a lot earlier rather than getting to third year and then only, realising right at the end. But it's a good learning experience. Yeah, certainly. So I think sort of the first point is work hard while you're here. I sort of was looking at it last night and I realised that the uni semester now is only, or you're really only at uni 15 weeks each trimester. So you're only sort of here for a total of 30 weeks a year. So really put in sort of the hard work while you're here. Certainly enjoy yourself while you have the time off, but make sure, because it's it's only half, it's only really about half the year, that you're really sort of taking advantage of all the opportunities you have, and sort of working as hard as possible within your courses and all that sort of stuff while you're here, rather than perhaps partying all the time. But certainly, as well as that, also building connections. So I found that building connections probably is just as important as necessarily how good you are on paper. Probably also building really good connections with people, because that's often what, in my particular case, that helped me certainly with employment. And it's certainly something that I think is sort of not thought about a great deal, sort of when you're, particularly when you're in first year, you're sort of just coming through the system. And I think it's really good to start thinking about that early. So getting involved in things like the Student Representative Council, different organisations around the university, the Student Guild, all those sorts of things really help to get to know people in general, and sort of make those connections that might help with employment, or might help you sort of get through uni. Or even if it's just going to past classes and sort of connecting with other students, and sort of building that sort of that social circle around you, I guess. So I think that'll really help you sort of not only afterwards, but certainly also getting through university, because I think I wouldn't have be sort of anywhere near as productive, I guess, while I was in undergrad, if I hadn't had such a good group of people around me when I was sort of going through. And I'd say finally the other one is enjoy it. Sort of I know it's a lot of hard work and it seems sort of doom and gloom, but it's I think it's something that you can certainly you should really enjoy, because they are. It is it's pretty fun to be doing something that you love, and sort of being able to get involved in a field such as health science, where you can sort of learn everything about the human body, and sort of just sort of envelop yourself in this world of and sort of learn about all these different things that you had no idea about to begin with. So I think it's key to sort of also enjoy it, and sort of not stress out too much, I think, which is interesting coming from a research student.